Welcome, everyone. My name is Sam Moon, and I'm Executive Director of MIT Enterprise Forum, which has been done in partnership since the beginning of the year with Hong Kong Science Technology Parks Corporation. I wanted to start off by just asking our host, Ellen, to come up and just say a few words of welcome. This is our last session for the summer break before we start again in September. On September 15th, we have Victor Fung, who will talk on e-commerce, his views of the future.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the corporation, a warm welcome, especially today is quite rainy, and you are here with us in the park and inside the Charles Cowell Auditorium, which is a sign of innovation. And today is come to our, a series of cooperation with MIT YGL, and the only difference this time is instead of one single distinguished speaker, today we are featuring altogether 4 at the same time, and they are bringing their personal experiences and very entrepreneurial spirits, having experienced in starting up their business in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in USA. And there is also an accelerator role from Nest, where Simon will also share his initiative in helping other startups up. Today we put together a floor of distinguished audience as well, because we have representatives from our parks company. They are R&D companies doing innovation, research center, university professors, and many other friends in this innovation ecosystem. So we are all stakeholders coming together, putting our minds together to hopefully synergize the wheels from our speakers today and to do better when we return and have your, valuable points taken from today's section. So I hope you have a good section today and continue to play your role in this innovation and ecosystem that we are working together. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to also ask you at the end of this, we'll end promptly at 5:30. It's going to be an open dialogue, which means you're going to hear a lot of me asking questions, or the questions are going to come from the audience. So far, we've been batting 1,000. Perfect. You guys have been asking all the questions. Since we have 4 speakers here today, I'm going to be out there like Oprah and Ellen, handing the microphone to you guys, and we'll have one on this end. If you want to get questions in, catch my eye, raise your hand, and we'll get the microphone to you as soon as possible. With that, let me ask Chuck, Peng, Simon, and Jake, come on up here, and a big round of applause. Since we have 4 speakers, I couldn't do our normal format where I'd ask them to speak for 15 minutes. And then we have a dialogue. So what I've asked them to each do is give us 2 minutes. Give us a summary in 1 minute of their background, where they're coming from. They're all serial, successful entrepreneurs. Let me stress, successful. I've been an entrepreneur a lot of times, but not always successful. They're also angel investors and friends of the entrepreneur. So let's start with Simon. Home growth.
Hello everyone, my name is Simon Squibb. I'm the CEO and founder of Nest, which is basically a platform investing in entrepreneurs. We put capital and time into talent. That's basically what we do. We sometimes describe ourselves as an entrepreneurial talent scouting system. We're looking for the superstars in the entrepreneurial world. I've been in Hong Kong 17 years, and so I'm really from the side of the equation where I've built businesses myself from scratch, so I know what it takes. As Reid Hoffman said from LinkedIn, building a startup is like jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. I truly believe that's exactly what it's like. I've been through it, and similarly, I've had successes and failures, It's interesting defining what success is and what failure is. It's an interesting subject all on its own. But to me, sometimes success is learnings. And failure can also sometimes turn out to be a success, although at the time it doesn't feel like it, but you learn so much. So I only have 2 minutes, so I think I'll wrap up there, but I'm looking forward to sharing some knowledge with you guys today and learning something myself from these distinguished guests. Thank you.
Yeah, you can clap.
Hello everyone, my name is Jacob Shu. I'm the CEO of Symbio. We are a global software foundry, headquartered in Silicon Valley, but with R&D labs across China, Taiwan, Finland, and Sweden. Got about 2,000 developers around the world working on lots of products and services and platforms for companies like Microsoft, PayPal, Wells Fargo, and such. So that's my day job. And a little bit of my own background. Symbio is my third startup. And my first 2 startups I started my first one when I was 24 and started the company and sold it in about 6 months. Then went and did my second one and also started it and sold it in 6 months. And this is my third company and it's been 16 years. So this has been the longest startup that I've been involved with. But it's been a great opportunity to be able to build a company from the ground up to a fairly global company. That's my day job. My hobby is really that I like to also invest and start companies with friends. A few years ago we started China's first social lending platform called Peng that became a World Economic Forum tech pioneer. A couple of years ago we started another company in China which is really kind of like the Square of China, so we did a mobile payments company in China as well that became very successful, did about $400 million of transactions in its first year after launch. So, that's kind of a hobby. I don't really consider myself an angel investor. It's really more of a passion. And one of the key truths of my life that I'll sort of share with you all later is I really believe in serendipity. So I really believe that that's really the magic that actually creates success, is when you open yourself up and you actually experience and meet lots of interesting companies. Usually the best things in life have come through serendipitous connections that have been made versus any kind of strategy or plan that ever had. So thank you, everyone.
My name is Peng. I have spent most of my adult life building companies, mostly in the US. Then I came, after I sold my last company, I went off to discover my roots in China, and a friend of mine captured me and made me a VC. So I spent about 3-4 years in Beijing investing as a VC. And then when I left Beijing last year, I realized this part of the world, Asia south of China, actually is getting very interesting. If you look at how China evolved the last 10-15 years in terms of tech VC, you see similar patterns up in Southeast Asia. And so we started a fund called Muscle Ventures. It's a Series A, B fund. So we come in after the angels have supported the company. So looking forward to talking to you guys about your deal flow. When I don't focus on working either in my fund or my startups, I spend a lot of time working with different governments on entrepreneurship. That's sort of my hobby. I think entrepreneurship can change the world, and we're actually seeing it happen right now.
Okay, super.
My name is Chuck. I was born in Hong Kong, and then I went over to study in the US. And after graduation, I worked in Silicon Valley for about 15 years. And I started up about 4 companies. 2 of them went bankrupt, and 2 of them got sold. And then after I sold my last one, then I came back to Hong Kong to start up my current company, AppoTech. At that time, my venture capitalist friends told me that to start a IC semiconductor design company, it would take about tens of millions US. So I tried to prove them wrong. I started this company with $1 million US. And now after 10 years, our sales this year is about 100 million US. So all the growth come from the profit generated by the initial 1 million US investment. So I think Hong Kong has the environment and the advantages to able to do something that you may not be able to do in Silicon Valley. Thank you.
John, can you stand up? John's going to have a microphone. I'm going to have a microphone. We'll go out, get our eye, raise your hand. But I'm going to start out with the first question since Peng made me think of this. We're on the doorstep of China. How does Hong Kong compare as a potential place to be the next Silicon Valley with the world changing as it is? Just because we're here and we want to change.
Yeah, China entrepreneurs have the advantage that the Chinese market is a continental market, so it's huge. Right? You can ignore everything else in the world and just focus on China, and you'll be fine. The problem with that is that when you're a certain size, right, your culture is set. How you think about serving markets is set. So you have a lot of trouble trying to do international business, right? So if China opens up more and more over the next 10, 15 years, and I expect it to, they're going to be exposed to all the global competitors. I think the advantage of coming to a place like Hong Kong is that if you look, just go anywhere in Hong Kong and you look up there, sometimes it's hard to tell which country you're in. There's so many different people in Hong Kong. I think that's one of the strengths of Hong Kong. You access the world from one spot. I think it's a lot easier to build international companies from here than in China.
What about Singapore?
I think it's similar kind of culture.
Okay. Simon, you're dying to add something.
Well, I think I'm originally from England, and 4 years ago when I decided I was going to full-time angel invest and I was going to work with other angels to build a platform Nest, I looked at many markets actually to do this in. So I went to Silicon Valley. It's a beautiful part of the world. Who wouldn't want to live there? And looked at the market. I went to London, same, looked at the market. And my family live in London, it would be very easy for me to do it there. I went to Shanghai and spent some time, also a great city. Again, I quite like the idea of setting up there. And then I looked at Hong Kong, and I found lots of traits in this market that I think is unique and gives us a real competitive advantage. Warren Buffett always says when everyone's running away from something, run towards it. And I think Hong Kong, interestingly enough, has been a little bit overlooked. And I think when you start looking at the details of Hong Kong and its opportunity, as you just mentioned, quite rightly, demographic here, it's often like the teams that I'm investing in, the startups that we've invested in, they're multicultural from day one. And actually, because of Hong Kong's small domestic market, any serious business needs to be looking global from day one too. So then I look at to me it's kind of a hardware and software opportunity Hong Kong has. The hardware side, of course, low tax, good rule of law, transparent banking system, and as an investor, and I've actually been angel investing for 15 years, it's very easy to invest money in a company here and get your money out. I've invested in companies in Beijing. I invested in a company, getting my money out has been a nightmare. I've invested in Silicon Valley, and the money I make gets taxed there. So it's really interesting when you look at the market and you look at the opportunity. And as things now move up into the cloud and an idea can come from anywhere and technology is actually getting cheaper to build, and people say to me, oh, Hong Kong, but listen, the rent's high. Anyone been to Silicon Valley lately and tried to rent or buy? It's crazy. So nowhere is cheap for rent. Let's just make it clear. And then people say, oh, there's no tech talent in Hong Kong, so the naysayers in this market. There's no tech talent. So if you try to hire a tech person in Silicon Valley, it's $5 million a year is almost the average rate for a top CTO paid at Google quite handsomely, $5 million a year. You try to, and I've got this problem at the moment, trying to hire a tech person in Silicon Valley. So everywhere, frankly, this is hard. Everywhere, this is a challenge. But I see Hong Kong as having quite a lot of capital, first of all, a lot of the Series A, Series B guys, and even the IPO opportunities. It's all here in Hong Kong. They live here. They've been traditionally investing in China the last 10, 15 years, and I've been hanging out with these guys, looking at you a lot. I know your peers are all saying to me, wow, I wish we could stop throwing money into China. It feels like a hole. And then when we do actually get a home run, we can't get our money out. So I think there's a real opportunity for Hong Kong, both because I feel it's got the hardware and the software side. So there are some weaknesses. I'm a big advocate for Hong Kong, but there are some weaknesses. I mean, there's talk about, you know, Hong Kong versus Singapore. Actually, I think it should be Hong Kong plus Singapore versus Silicon Valley, if you ask me. I mean, honestly, the talent that I lose in Hong Kong, they move to Silicon Valley. They don't actually leave Hong Kong and go to Singapore, for example. So it's very much like Silicon Valley. What it has over Hong Kong right now is a mindset. So, you know, the whole concept of Silicon Valley is a mindset, not a place. I think Hong Kong just needs to change its mindset a little bit and believe in itself. And then I think Hong Kong just needs to perhaps take a bit more chance, take a bit more risk, understand what failure means and embrace it. And if you let me, I will basically speak for the next 1 hour, so I will stop.
And I know that to be true. And Jake, Chuck, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, you know, I do some business here in Hong Kong. I actually have a fairly large lab in Shenzhen, very close by. And I think that's actually another sort of intangible sort of asset that I think Hong Kong has, that connection. But when I think about, you know, when I think about the greatest opportunity probably of the 21st century, it's not China. It's actually being that connection between China and the West, right? And I think here clearly is where that's happening. Right? I think that's the first thing. I think Hong Kong has a huge advantage vis-a-vis other places, because most people here in Hong Kong understand both how Chinese people think and how Americans or how Westerners think as well. I think the second thing that also is you know, I think probably hasn't been activated as much here in Hong Kong is that, going to my earlier point about serendipity, that requires a lot of bumping into people, right? It requires a lot of like crowding in. You know, I think you find that a lot of great ideas, a lot of great insights come from, you know, places that have high population densities, right? Because, you know, you're constantly facing interesting problems and you're getting insights about things that other people probably don't get by just bumping into people. So I think those are two sort of structural advantages that I think Hong Kong has vis-a-vis other places in the world.
Chuck?
Yeah, I think Hong Kong has the unique advantage. It has very strong IP protection. That is very, very important for technology companies. And the second is it's right at the door of China. It's right next to China, so it can be a bridge between the West and the East. So having these two different, these unique advantages, I think Hong Kong is in a very strong position in being a technology hub.
Okay, great. I'm going to open up to your questions. We've got one in the back.
I got a question.
Okay, you have a question. Go ahead.
So being an entrepreneur, there's arguably 3 basic things you can do when looking at your startup. Yeah, you can invest more, put it on pause, or pull the plug. What type of metrics do you guys use to determine which one of these things that you would do next with, you know, your startup?
Who wants to start?
It depends on the VCs, what they do. So my answer will be different from some other VCs. I look primarily at the entrepreneur, right? First of all, as a VC, you will screw up in some of your deals, and you invest in the wrong guy or girl. And you, at that point when you recognize it, usually because we're early stage guys, we just sort of move away from it. We just won't spend time with it, right? If they do something egregious, we might take legal action, etc. But failing that, we screwed up. Let's move on. So we disengage. The company might actually still make money. We at some level don't care, right? Because what we need to focus on, our successes, the failures are sort of built into the performance model. The case when it's a market, misforecast of the market, or the technology is not quite there, that's where the rubber meets the road for the entrepreneur. Right? We look for people that push really, really hard, you know, start cutting their own salaries, start doing everything it takes to survive, right? And we actually look at that as sort of the touchstone as to whether to keep supporting the company or not. It is the entrepreneur and his or her spirit that we invest in. So ultimately we look at that to decide if the company, we should give up on the company.
Any other comments from the panel? Jay?
Yeah, I'll answer that question maybe from the entrepreneur standpoint as well, is that I think every startup, I mean, there are plenty of metrics, and I think it depends on what stage and what kind of business that you're looking to do, but I think from an entrepreneur standpoint about whether or not you really want to cut bait or keep going, it comes down to really three variables, right? That are very hard to quantify, but you guys will feel it. It really comes down to passion, perseverance, and adaptability. And it really comes down to, if you're an entrepreneur, right, you're going down a path, right? So the real question is, if you're putting your own time into this and presumably your own capital in the beginning, there's at some point there comes, your store, right, of ability to actually continue putting that passion into it, right? So I think that's number one is, do you have the passion to keep going, right? Is this idea or is this market direction or vision that you've got something that you really feel passionate about? If the answer is yes, then it really becomes secondly about perseverance. And I think perseverance is a function of, do you have the capital, the air, capital is like air, right? Do you have the capital to keep going, to persevere? And going to earlier about passion, do you have the passion and to fund that, to push forward on that perseverance? And that third is really adaptability. Because at the end, I think one of the things that's changed a lot about doing a startup today versus, let's say, 10 years ago is that, it's becoming quite easy to actually very quickly iterate and get real-time feedback from the market, from your prospective users. So it's really a question of how quickly you can iterate and how quickly you can pivot. As the sort of big, that's probably the most impactful word that I think has affected Silicon Valley startups in this kind of big stage now of boom that we've seen, is that the concept of the pivot, right? The ability to actually stay true to your vision, but actually change your business model, change your product or service feature to adapt to what your users are looking for. So I kind of look at those three as being the key variables about whether or not you keep going or whether or not you cut bait and try something else.
I might add, actually I do love the term pivot. I think it's really overused now. Basically, my existing business model fails, I'm going to try something else, right? Basically that's what pivot means. But I think it's a very good question, because I think this concept of like stopping and admitting failure, this thing is very hard to do. And I think basically from an angel investor perspective, for me often, it's to do really with this concept of fail fast, fail often. And so I think that no one wants to fail, no one wants to give up. But there is an important moment where you realize that life is short. And so do you really want to keep going on something that isn't working? However, the flip side of that is, if you look at the companies that are successful, none of them had an easy ride. Airbnb, for example, literally is 2 days away from running out of money to pay for its server costs. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And the only reason it survived is because the 74th phone call it made to VC fund got through to the right guy who said sure, and they moved fast and got the money. So if you don't believe, you don't keep pushing, then of course, this whole concept I said earlier about jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down, if you stop building that plane, you are going to die. But equally, if you realise that you're about to hit the floor, pull the parachute, right? So, which I just made that analogy up, quite like it. So I've added to Reid Hoffman's brilliant statement, and he can use it if he likes. But that's my quick addition to that.
I think the most important is the team. Whether you feel comfortable with the team. At any time when you find out that you cannot believe in the team anymore, you should pull the plug.
Okay, and when you say team, are these equity partners in your company? Is that how you? That's how you keep people wrong.
For my personal experience, I just said that I have 2 companies that went bankruptcy, and at that case, because I was partner, I have several partners in the team, and then I felt that the partners, the team with the partners, we probably cannot make it happen. We don't have the right partners for this company. So that's why we decided we should file bankruptcy. Okay. And for some companies that I invested, initially I invested because it seemed that after I do due diligence, seems the team is okay. So was okay, so I invested. But after a while, you find out that the team may not be, there's something that you don't know about the team. You find out something that you don't know before. And also you find out that the team is not passionate enough they are not willing to do any salary cut or do an extra mile to make it happen, then I decided have to pull the plug.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I could articulate what the point you're making is a really good point as well, and I just add, I think basically to sum this up by company culture. So a lot of people start businesses just to make money, and often they're the ones that fail. You've got to have a culture, a mission, a vision. You know, what's the purpose of life? A life with purpose. I think it's exactly the same inside a company. So even at my Nest level, my business, the people I've brought in, I want to make sure they have the same vision. They believe in Hong Kong, they believe in Hong Kong entrepreneurs. You've got to have those same core belief system. Otherwise, don't hire them, don't bring them in. I think in companies, basically the ones maybe I failed in, you failed in, are the ones where the culture wasn't aligned. People were doing it just for money, like so therefore the salary element, or they didn't have a bigger picture vision in mind. They weren't doing something that's greater than themselves. So I think culture, basically, you've got to make sure you've got it in the company you start. You've got to make sure you've got it in the company you invest in. That's my experience.
Okay. Questions from the audience? I'm going to call you participants.
As you have done many startups, is it possible to let us know a little bit how have you perceived the challenge difference between the first time, second time, third time? Because the experience doesn't mean that it makes it easier. So would you like to comment on this?
The entire panel? Yeah. Okay. You want to start, Jim?
Yeah, well, I had 3 distinct experiences, so I'll give you my feedback. The first one was an accident, right? So the first one, actually, my background is I was an investment banker, so actually the first startup actually I fell into by accident because I was just trying to solve a problem that I was having, in terms of just be able to get data online. So we essentially was a bunch of friends that actually put the company together, and we quickly built a solution and sold it. But the second one, I think I made the typical rookie mistake in the second one, right? The second one, which was, we went out and raised a lot of capital. We thought raising a lot of capital was a sign of success. Right? So, so our second one, we kind of went out and recruited the best team, raised a ton of capital. We raised back then. This was the late '90s, and we raised $4 million without a business plan, right? And literally, it took like 2 weeks to raise that amount of money. The good old days, yeah. But we made the typical recruiting mistake, where we raised a lot of money, recruited a very fancy team, got very nice offices, and didn't know what we wanted to do. Actually, didn't have really a clear vision of what we're going to do. And luckily, we actually did end up building something that we were able to actually monetize. So my third startup, which is my current company, essentially we bootstrapped the whole company for 15 years or 13 years before we actually ever brought in any investors. And I think that was the time when we recognized after that second experience that it's really critical to first find something that you really, and I think today it's what entrepreneurs need to think about is what can you do that's going to have the most impact in this world. So it's not about how do I make as much money as I can as quickly as possible. It's really around how do you actually make that impact. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we make the impact, how do we create a company that we can all be really proud of and that we can really want to spend the rest of our lives building. So the third time around, essentially, it became less about the startup and less about the ritz of trying to be an entrepreneur, if you would, and really trying to just kind of dig down and do something that we could all really be proud of and want to do for the rest of our lives.
Okay. Anyone else want to address that? Okay.
The long and short of it doesn't get easier, but you do get more philosophical about all the failures you have. So, like I think Sam mentioned earlier, the definition of success and failure. You could have a long discussion on that. The media likes to pick a point in time and go, wow, that was successful. Wow, that was a failure. But if you look at your life as an entrepreneur, even within one company, and you look at the history, there are some parts where you almost die, like that event with Airbnb, and I've had opportunities like that to see near-death experiences of a company, and then sometimes you're very successful, and you close a multi-million-dollar deal, and it looks very nice, right? And it goes up and down through the life of the company. Some of us are less fortunate. At some point, it goes below a certain level, and you actually have to shut the company down. and people call that failure. And then sometimes you go all the way up and you go public and people call that success, or you get acquired by Google and that's success. But if you draw the trajectory out throughout history, companies are actually no different from organic life forms. At some point, you're young and you're vigorous and you start growing. Sometimes you die. Sometimes you get to your middle age and you get stodgy, and then you get older, and at some point you die. Right? I don't think there's a company on the planet that's going to last forever. So you got to be clear on what you mean by success for yourself as you become an entrepreneur and you get on with trying to be successful. I think that's what I want.
Okay. Chuck, did you want to add anything? No? Okay. Other questions? Well, we got a real lively audience. Oh, okay. First time this has happened.
One question I have is, because the panel has been both on the investing and on the startup side, is there's a number of opportunities that I've come across, a number of companies that I've seen that are absolutely stunning. They have a great concept, great idea. They have one weak point that winds up bringing the entire company down. And it's a very sad moment, because in a number of instances, it's a life-changing, world-changing technology that's never going to reach the market. Is there a way, have you ever been involved with, or could you come up with a way to rehab some of these companies and bring them back so that the technology that they bring forward can serve the world?
Are you talking about MySpace?
Someone's
tried that. So just to clarify the question, a magic formula we come up with right now that brings back to life the dead. Is that right? It would be interesting to know what your experience is, and if you've got a particular example. I mean, I've seen lots of businesses fail, and personally have reinvested in those entrepreneurs in the new venture. Maybe it does link back to this concept of what failure is. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, MySpace was a failure." Actually, no. The people that started it changed the world, and they sold it to Rupert Murdoch for $600 billion US, and now have a pretty nice life out of that, investing out of California. Rupert Murdoch, of course, lost all his money, and it was a failure for him. But so it depends on the example that you maybe have.
Okay.
Yes.
You got an example?
Yeah,
All right, I have
I've
one
got
too.
several.
Go ahead.
But in any event, one particular example is the
Now,
telecom
put the microphone so we can hear you. It's on.
Testing? Okay,
Yes.
great. So one particular example is in the telecom industry, where we're trying to bring wireless broadband to the other 3 billion, for instance. And there's an excellent company, great concept, technology that works in the Asian region, in the Symbio region, and there's just a leadership problem that had an issue getting resolved. They've been on life support for several years now. But if that came to light, it would dramatically increase the coverage and provide not only job opportunities, but all kinds of other benefits for education and what have you in an otherwise underserved part of the world, because of their remote location, because of the geography, because of the line of sight point-to-point technology doesn't work for them. So this is technology that exists. It's cheaper, but it's just a management problem. And now that is a particular company that could come back with a proper strategy. But if you're dealing with entrepreneurs that are inexperienced, they don't necessarily know how to manage that transition.
Sure.
I'll add another example, BlackBerry.
It was the subject of my lunch today.
Here in October, that John Chen will be turning BlackBerry, question mark.
So I think you just pointed to the question, what do you invest in? Right? So in our investor deck, we're actually in the middle of fundraising for LPs, from LPs right now. We go through, okay, here's the mobile sector, and here's the game sector, and here's the SaaS and cloud, and so on and so on. And here's our views on it, and here are example companies, and we go through a lot of details. And at the end of all that, I said, you know what? All that really doesn't matter. We'll find you the top 15 entrepreneurs in the region, and we'll all do fine. Right? So what do we focus on? We focus on the entrepreneur. We don't invest in technology. We don't invest in business models. We don't invest in markets. We invest in entrepreneurs. So I don't even try to fix a company that doesn't have entrepreneurs, because what am I going to do? If I find an entrepreneur, he or she will have his own passion. If they happen to be passionate about that particular thing, fine. But the chances of that happening is 0 to 50.
Yeah, I would definitely second what Peng said, right? I think, maybe because I'm in the technology industry, I frankly believe that technology is becoming a commodity, right? So that I think anything that's core technology, a lot of it really comes down to a product market fit issue. And you mentioned MySpace. I mean, people forget probably the first scaled social network was something called 6 Degrees in the 90s, right? So these things, these technology and these concepts are echoes, right? They keep reverberating through the years. In fact, even today, I just made an investment in a company that is the same technology that I actually did, 17 years ago in my own startups, right? Just applied in a different way, right? So I think technology itself is really a commodity. It really comes down to the entrepreneur and the team that you can put together behind it.
Oh. Chuck, would you agree?
Yeah, based on my personal experience, 2 years ago I bought a Bluetooth company, which has been survived for about over 10 years, and then burned about, I think probably 30, 40 million US already. And then I bought the company, and then, of course, I'm interested in the technology. But just like Peng said, the first thing I do is replace the management, and then put in the new entrepreneurs and management in. And now 2 years later, now the company is making 1 million profit every year. Every month, sorry.
Wow. Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I've had this problem. Really, I mean, it depends on what stage in the cycle of the business is at, what you do. So I just invested in a company that's doing a wearable tech product, and these guys are capable of making it happen. There's a lot of people doing their idea, but I just think these guys will go faster and do it better. If somewhere down the line there's a falling out or an issue, you have to let go and it dies. However, there are later stage investment processes where often they are buying the company to replace the management. That's actually the upside. So I don't know if they've got IP in that particular example, I don't know if they've got a tangible something, but maybe it's worth buying it and installing new management. My experience of installing new management in early stage companies is it's a complete disaster. I mean, frankly, even probably at the Yahoo level example, you're trying to install the original culture with new people. It's really tough, actually. And I know myself, I started Nest. No one's going to love this company more than me. No one. I mean, I've got people now who are my partners in the business, and they do love it, but I started it. And that's a really hard thing to recreate. And that's why, frankly, if you ask me, that's why businesses like Facebook are doing so well still. Because Mark Zuckerberg has a bigger mission, connect the world. He's driven, he started it back when Yahoo offered him $1 billion for the business. He's famous for saying, I'm not sure I have another idea as good as this one. So that's why he didn't sell it for $1 billion. So I think that belief and that drive is very hard to replace. I have done it once. I would think I was lucky it worked, but you have to make people fall in love with the business and then almost install their own culture and their own vision for that business. And otherwise, frankly, in the early stage, I don't know what stage your example's at, but in the early stage it falls over. BlackBerry is a completely different case. I was talking to guys at Temasek today about buying that business, and I was asking, not in a joking sense over lunch, what we would do with the business. I think they wouldn't give me the money, although I didn't ask. And so, but it was quite interesting, the different opportunities that a business like that has. If you look at BlackBerry's BBM system, for example, it's basically WhatsApp. If it made it cross-platform, took that technology out, there's all sorts of opportunities around it. And you look at Divide, which is a Hong Kong startup that recently got acquired by Google. I think it deserves a round of applause. No? All right. You've heard of this? It's fantastic that Google have bought a Hong Kong startup. But they basically created something called Divide, which is where you separate your work and your life on your mobile. BlackBerry actually developed this. They just haven't made it cross-platform. So there's huge opportunities for them. And I think the third idea we had over lunch was basically take their $2 billion cash pile and open sweet shops around the world. So, quite a diverse range of ideas that we do with their cash pile.
All right, but it's universal from our thought leaders, all four of you, it's the person, entrepreneur that matters, not the technology. Yeah? Okay. I have a question here.
Hi, thanks for taking the time. Over the last few years, we're seeing an increasing number of big corporations dying slowly. Part of it is they are running into innovators' dilemma because it's hard to innovate when you know it's going to cannibalize your current business. And also, or they react very slowly to the market because they seem very distant from customers. So my first question is, what advice would you give these big companies? And second question is, how do you motivate your team and keep them excited as you grow? Thank you.
Not wanting to hog the microphone too much. 15 years ago, I started a company in Hong Kong called Fluid. Its whole premise is to help companies with innovation's dilemma. Its first client was the Wall Street Journal. You know, the basic. So there are firms out there that help brands with that problem. If you'll notice, there's a trend now that's in the US and starting to come out to Asia, where big brands team up with accelerators like mine, and we work with them to find innovation that helps them change and evolve. So we teamed up with Barclays Bank. We searching for fintech ideas in partnership with them. They provide insight and help and support on the technical side. We provide the funding, so it's quite, and the scouting of those entrepreneurs. So it's quite interesting to see that being innovation's dilemma, which is an interesting subject matter, being sold that way. So that's a quick bit of insight from me.
Okay.
Yeah. So my company, we do that for a living today. So I mean, for example, over the past 5 years, we work with guys like PayPal, Intuit, Square to build a lot of these new disruptive payment technologies. Now we're working with guys like Wells Fargo and BNP Paribas and traditional brick and mortar banks to actually build the kind of weapons to actually protect those disruptions. But I think that one of the things that, and I think Simon said it quite well about some of the issues about the innovator's dilemma and how organizations get so optimized to kind of be myopic and look at the world only from their perspective. I think Satya Nadella, the new CEO of Microsoft, said it very well, that I think that the issue of the innovator's dilemma that most people ignore isn't people always kind of hone in on the part that says there's some business that's going to cannibalize their core business. And I find most large organizations, they're quite aware of that. Right? So they're always scanning the market for what's actually going to cannibalize and break their business. The part that they miss out on actually is the new spark of innovation, that new thing that is so small right now that it is not meaningful. Right? It's just noise. And I think Satya Nadella said, Microsoft's biggest problem in the last few years is that, they would only look at things that were going to be billion-dollar opportunities, right? Because that would move the needle for a company of that size. When in actuality, that $1 million new idea or that $100,000 idea, nobody pays attention to it because it just doesn't seem big enough. And that becomes very quickly, it can snowball to become something that actually ends up cannibalizing. So I think the bigger issue really is that myopia and just looking at the world from the perspective of scale versus really looking at the real new things that might emerge into something big.
I think Clay Christensen, when he started all that work on innovators like Dilemma, he was trying to figure out how to help big companies innovate. He created a consulting group called InnoSight, and he has been trying to do that for a couple of decades now, I think. I think if you sit Clay down or one of his consultants down and get them in an honest moment, you'll get them to say it's not possible. And actually, I've had this conversation with both McKinsey folks and InnoSight folks and other consulting groups that try to do this for a living. Some of the problems are very, very fundamental. They're cultural. There are even compensation problems. A VC fund lasts for 10 years, so this is how you create disruptive technologies. You need to invest for 10 years, and then you maybe, if you're lucky, get some returns. The average lifespan of a CEO is 5 years, and CEOs are usually pretty smart, right? So why would they want to invest, for returns, so something that's going to benefit somebody else and not them, right? So there are all kinds of these very fundamental problems. The culture of large companies is for operational efficiency. You're not going to be able to build disruptive innovations efficiently. Right? It's just serendipity, is stumbling about stuff, it's blowing up stuff, and then learning. So there's many reasons why big companies cannot innovate. I don't know the right answer. Maybe some of these outsourced R&D work might come through, produce some results for these companies. The incubators, the VC funds, maybe they will. IBM and Cisco has been doing this outsourced innovation, M&A basically, the last 10 years, 15, 20 years, very effectively. But still, it's tough. You know, you look at IBM, it's sort of squeezed everything out already. So maybe, I don't know this for a fact, but maybe it's okay. Big companies at some point die, right? and then new companies come out and replace them. And that's the circle of life. See, I told you about the philosophy thing, right?
Chuck, anything to add?
I only work as a small guy in big companies, so I don't know what the top management thinks. But from my perspective, big companies is big dinosaur. Too much bureaucracy, too many issues, hard to change. Very hard to change.
Actually, it's a really interesting subject. I guess we've got time, because I see hundreds of hands about the last question, so maybe we can talk. I find this subject fascinating, and I think it actually goes to the core of everything we've already talked about. So when your question is really, you know, how can these big companies innovate, right? Well, this is how I do it. First of all, I told them the story of Kodak. This is a company that invented the digital camera. And what did they do? Bury it. And actually what's really interesting about Kodak, when you study it, as I have intensely, you'll find that they made their most amount of money just before they died. So between 1985 and 2001, they were taking $10 million a year. By 2007, there was $750 million a year in loss, bankrupt. This is a company that actually invented internally the digital camera, but just buried it. So you tell them a story like that, scare the shit out of them. That's the first thing you do. And the other thing is you talk about the more, more positive stuff. And if you look deep at companies like Google, actually, like Google started in a garage. Okay, so there's the argument, potential argument that, well, these guys, they've got nothing to lose, and they build this amazing business, and away they go. But if you study it hard, and I'm lucky enough to have a very senior person at Google on my board, and you listen to how he talks and how Google thinks, the culture in this company is unbelievable. I mean, this is a company, you take HSBC and Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, combine them, their market cap doesn't reach Google's. Google's market cap, $370 billion. And this is why, still today, they act like they've got nothing to lose. This is something entrepreneurs need to learn, investors need to learn. Actually, it's when I made my first $1 million US that I then was nervous to lose it. You've got to act, though, like you've got nothing to lose. And Google still act like they've got nothing to use. An example of that is, recently in the papers, here's these cars driving themselves, right? People getting in them and no steering wheel, how crazy, and then people standing in the streets watching these cars go by. Google still makes nearly all of its revenue from search. Can you imagine the bureaucracy, the lawyers in the room, the compliance department, when Larry Page says, hey, why don't we develop cars that drive themselves? You can just hear these guys, and we've all been in those meetings, although I don't work for corporates, but we've all been in these meetings where they say, oh my God, but what if that car crashes and the people inside it die? What if that car hits someone? And then someone in the room says, actually, what has this got to do with search where we make all our money? Let's just stick to search, because we're going to get sued if someone gets hit by that car. And because we're rich, we're going to get really sued. So let's not do it. And if they say yes, if Larry Page said yes, then they would not be what they are today, because they still act like they've got nothing to lose. And this is the cultural thing, I think on every level, people need to embrace. Hong Kong itself, entrepreneurs, investors, you've got to act like you've got nothing to lose. And so that innovation thing, often Kodak was scared about what they were going to lose. Warren Buffett calls it the economic moat. Kodak had the ultimate economic moat. They had these buildings that were producing film. So if you do digital, they lose it, but they die anyway, you see. So that's the point, and that's how you scare the shit out of corporates. That's how I get to support the startups I invest in.
So you remind me of an investment tip I have. In fact, I think I might execute on this one. If you select 20, 30, 40 companies that are run by the founders, I think that portfolio will outperform the market average. And I think it's due to that. Entrepreneurs don't act like they are employees. They act in the interest of the future of the company. And again, this is why I support entrepreneurs.
Okay. Yeah. Question back here?
Yes, my name is Bill Pike, and I had a question for you, Peng. It's going back a couple of discussions ago. You mentioned that you don't invest in a technology, you don't invest in a business plan, you don't invest in a particular market, you invest in an entrepreneur. And I'll preface the question so it's not too broad, but I started my own business before I graduated university and been running it ever since. Kind of a sleeper entrepreneur, doing my own little thing, no investors, no VC, didn't worry about that. And the financial crisis woke me up. I needed investment, I needed some help in order to survive. And then I started realizing what the investor world and kind of those friends that would come and help out, professional investors that are friends that would come and help out. And now I'm taking that knowledge both for building up and growing my own business as well as for making investments in others. But how would you define, in that case, you invest in the entrepreneur. How do you define an entrepreneur?
So there are generic definitions that you can look up in the dictionary, but I look at what the person's capability is and what his intent is, and why his or her intent is the way it is. I'm looking for people that want to change the world in some way. They are not happy to live the mediocre life. That when they are gone from this planet, people will remember them. That who want to live a life that makes a difference. That's what I look for. And it's really, really hard to figure this out a lot of times because money gets in the way and you try to figure out what the guy is thinking. But a lot of times you can, if you spend enough time with people, you can get to the heart of what they are, right, and what they're driving for. The good folks will drive the technology. So you invest in the entrepreneur, they'll build the technology. The good guys will figure out the markets, go after the business models, etc. So I don't worry about that as much. The existence of a good business model, the existence of a reasonable proof point are just indications that I've got a good entrepreneur on my hands, right? And I look for people that want to make meaning with their lives. That's what I do.
Any other definitions?
One person once said, an entrepreneur is someone who steals office supplies from home to bring them to work.
Someone knew that was them and got the mic.
So I definitely agree with Peng, is that entrepreneur is someone who really puts his puts his vision, puts his company, puts that impact ahead of himself. I was just browsing a bookstore earlier in the airport, and there's a book called Leaders Eat Last. Right? So I think an entrepreneur is someone who really puts their company, puts their vision first, and puts their team first as well.
I've just realised I'm not an entrepreneur. I always eat first.
Okay, question here. Yep.
Yes. In fact, I would like to echo to the question how to make big company work. In fact, I would suggest that when a company grows too big, just break it down into a small. In fact, one very big company in Europe, Schneider Electric, although they have almost 20 billion euros turnover every year, but they break the company into more than 100 business units with more than 100 smaller CEO and smaller business units. And right now the company lasts for more than 60 years already. And one of the speakers here is very well is that for big company, basically the management system and structure is trying to build up an organization for efficiency and ease of management, not for innovation. During the time Kodak invented the digital camera, at that time I was in Polaroid, another company for the traditional inserting film, old type of camera. I found out the same thing happened in Kodak, Polaroid, and also Nokia. When a company goes too big, the big business unit will dominate everything, including the management system, the HR system, the salary rate. Therefore, for some new technology or innovation, I totally agree that it should not be run under a very big umbrella. It should spin off. Yeah? And this is my my thinking and observation from the past experience. And also, I would like to ask a question for the speaker that I totally agree that for VC or for investor, it's very important to invest on the people, in fact, instead of the technology or the business model or the vision or the mission. But what do you think? Yeah, what kind of attribute for the people, for the entrepreneur, is best fit for those startup company, especially those innovative tech company? What kind of attribute this company will need to have? You just like yours?
So do you mean like what does the company need to do to succeed, or is that your question?
I mean that people is very important for any technology startup. Yeah. And I think most of the investor or most of the people understand that a good team is very important for that kind of a company. But what kind of people? Yeah. Engineer, good businessman, work hard,
Full head of hair, the talents, right?
good brain.
I think. Well, I mean, to be honest, there's no secret formula for what you're talking about. I mean, I'm personally invested in every different type of structure there is. 2 co-founders. My model I'm following a very similar model in the US around a company called Y Combinator, and that company has some brilliant insights into how it should work. And one of their things is you've got to have 2 co-founders, right? So, but personally, I've invested in businesses with 2 co-founders that hasn't worked. And I've invested in businesses with 1 co-founder that's worked. So I think it's very interesting. There's no direct formula, but there are some numbers you can crunch around, like you were saying earlier about, number of entrepreneurs generally will succeed over perhaps people that are not entrepreneurial and risk averse and won't take chance. And so again, I always think that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Number one thing is culture. After that, the strategy, even the people. I mean, you can have in my company, I've got a very diverse group of people. I was just talking about it with Doug Glenn here, who we're co-investors in the company together. And he was just saying, he actually said, Simon, amazing you built a group of people that are so diverse yet have a common purpose. So I think that, but frankly, I've been involved in businesses before that I've invested in, maybe a little bit to the point you were making earlier, where they are very different individuals and they don't have a common purpose and therefore they clash. So I think this culture thing, to me, I know I've repeated it a bit too much, but it's such an important element that people overlook again and again when they're trying to look for what is the perfect person, what is the perfect product, what is the perfect structure. None of it matters if you've got the right culture. I mean, you think about things like NGOs, how people just work in those businesses for nothing and just do it because they love it and somehow find a way to pay their bills, right? And the NGO is probably one of the strongest kind of cultural focused orientated businesses, right? So I just invested in a business that's doing equity crowdfunding, for example, and the whole push behind it is that banking is broken, SME banking is broken, and if you're a small business and you want to get a loan, unless you're already rich, you can't get it. So someone out there might have the cure to cancer and a business to fix that, but they can't get the money, or if they do, they have to spend a year trying to raise it from people like me, right? Begging people like us to give them money, when actually they just want to get on with building their product. So I think the future is equity crowdfunding, and these people have started. You see the people behind this business, there's loads of people that are doing it. They're so driven about helping entrepreneurs solve the financial crunch that they have, both seed, growth, Series A, Series B. These people are just so passionate. They're very diverse, the group of people that are taking care of it, but wow, are they driven to fix banking, disrupt banking. I mean, the whole thing, sorry, I'm now rambling, but one of the things is that, Napster disrupted the music business. Well, music business wasn't that evil, and it did make us happy, right? Banking, on the other hand, this is an industry that needs disrupting, right? I mean, this is an industry that deserves it. So, HSBC, SME banking, if you're in this room, shame on you. I mean, right now, you can't get an overdraft at these banks.
I agree with you.
You can't even get a credit card. We just invested in this company. They can't get a credit card. I mean, I have to give personal guarantee for them to get a credit card. And then I have to put 100,000 Hong Kong dollars into the bank on top of a personal guarantee for an 80,000 Hong Kong dollar credit card facility that's paid every month guaranteed. It just doesn't make any sense. So banking's broken. They deserve to be disrupted. And actually, thank you.
No, great.
And so I see this team as the team is diverse, but they are driven by that goal, and that's why they'll be successful, in my opinion.
Thank you very much for your show.
Some other comments.
Well, I'll make the comment about Nokia, right? Because I think it's actually quite instructive. Nokia, right? You made mention earlier about Nokia, right? And I have unique insight because my company did a lot of work with Nokia. And one of the things that you find is that I think what brought that company down was hubris, right? Was that they saw so many of these things, but they thought they were the best and biggest company. They were guys who invented all this stuff, and they couldn't believe that somebody could actually disrupt their business because they were so powerful, right? But that leads to really, I think, an earlier question about one of the biggest lessons I've learned through the years is the number one character trait I think for a great entrepreneur, someone who's really going to scale, is humility, right? And part of that humility is actually knowing what your own weaknesses are, right? So that you can actually build the right team around you. I don't think there is any formula in terms of if the guy should be an engineer, should be a finance guy, should be a sales guy. That's all context, right? That depends on what market you're trying to go after. But I think it really comes down to really having that humility to build the right team around you. And my mental model that I kind of look for when I look at companies to invest in is that I kind of look for three generals. It's actually kind of a very old Chinese view of looking at it, which is you need three generals to win a war, right? Is that you really need the general who can actually go in and take a new territory, right, in a place, get that beachhead. Then you need sort of a different type of general, a different mentality to actually take that territory and grow it, expand it, and scale it. And then you really need the other general that also is just as important, is once you've got the territory, to protect it, right, to keep others from actually invading it. So when I look at teams, I actually use that mental model oftentimes to assess the personalities of the people on that team.
Still people.
Still people. It's always people.
For now, until drones take over.
Amazon, coming soon. Peng, want to add anything?
Well, yeah, just to give you a sense of how diverse it is. You said you worked, yeah, I nodded, and then I started thinking, Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, I can go on and on, right? These are not necessarily the most humble people on the planet, right? So I guess the point is it's really hard to define what it is, what kind of traits are absolutely needed, but so you got to look for people who just want to make a difference. That's core entrepreneurship, right? And it could come in many different forms. The hardest part I actually have with this is actually I don't know how to invest in people who are not humble. I kind of work with them, so I don't give up, right? But some of them do very well, right? So I don't know. Invest in drive.
Chuck, anything to add?
I think just very similar to what the other three speakers said. I think first had to the entrepreneur is why he wants to start the company. Is for definitely cannot be for money. Money definitely not for money. Have to be to make something different, and then to prove that him or she is alive. Okay, to prove himself, prove herself. Okay, I think that this is very important. Without this unique trait, I think the others are pure luck to be successful. And then the second is focus. When you do a startup, you have to be very focused. You have very limited resources. You cannot do many things at the same time. Doing one thing successful already is very tough already. I think focus is very important. And then the third is you have to prepare for the worst. You have to be very do a lot of calculation to calculate the risk, how to reduce the risk, and how to prepare, especially mentally. Because a lot of people may even suicide if they got gut failure. So you have to be very be careful about that. The others about what kind of company, what kind of technology, I think that those are background. Whether you have the related background, related to the industry or the market segment that you are going to work on. I think these four are the fundamental traits.
Okay. It reminds me of something Po Chung gave advice a couple of months ago. Never, as an entrepreneur, go into something that you don't know anything about. Would all four of you agree with that?
Very, very agree. Remember Warren Buffett, he only buy Coke's stock because he only drink Coke.
Having said that, actually, I mean, personally, I don't come from finance. Okay, I'm an entrepreneur, build business. I'm actually now in the finance business. So I think, like Elon Musk, for example, what did he know about space? Do you think? You know, like now he's doing SpaceX, right? Do you think he was a car expert when he got into Tesla? No. I think the bit, you know, that's why there's no general rule around it. I mean, that's why advice is always dangerous. You know, you've got to 60% of advice is made up anyway. You know, it's basically at the end of the day, the bottom line is, I think you've got to do what you're passionate about. If you look at Elon Musk as a good example of someone doing stuff he doesn't understand, he's passionate about it. He has the funding and the experience and the connections to make things work, and he wants to change the world. So, I mean, I think they're the ingredients, and don't necessarily need to know anything about it.
Okay. Peng?
Yeah, I agree. The other entrepreneur is that does things like this, Richard Branson. So Richard Branson,
You won't be offended.
Yeah, Richard. He does all kinds of interesting businesses because he's passionate about it. I think the advantage all of us have is that we're given a brain between our 2 ears that can go figure out things. And if you have a problem, as they say, mother is the invention of is a mother. Necessity is the mother of invention. And if you put yourself in a position where you have to invent stuff, you go figure out, you go build stuff. Passion drives the world.
Okay. Jake, any final comment on that?
No, I definitely agree. I would just say, you know, I think you just have to know enough to have a unique insight to what you're going to go do.
Okay, good. Question?
Question on the VC industry structure here in Hong Kong. All four of you are early stage investors, I assume. And I'm a recent transplant from Silicon Valley. It seems to me, without having spoken to a lot of VC friends here, that here in Hong Kong we have more early stage investors than the traditional, you know, mid stage or expansion stage, and then mezzanine stage or late stage VC investors. So, in your investment model, do you find it somewhat limiting in terms of the investment sectors that you find attractive? For instance, I noted that here nobody is talking about pharmaceutical kind of a product as investment target, because it's simply that ecosystem in terms of a VC industry may not exist here. So do you usually consider the cash efficiency or how much it will last until the next round of VC investments, or you simply understand your own pocketbook and you have enough cash to pay the next stretch of the runway when this round runs out?
Okay. I feel like you're looking at me, but you're probably not. Are you asking me that question?
Oh, no, I think both you and Peng.
Well, I'll quickly give a few points. Actually, first of all, there are a lot of businesses indirectly linked to pharmaceutical companies that are starting in Hong Kong. So, for example, Doug and I here have invested in a company called Play2. And this company's whole tagline is games that are good for you. One of its pilot product is actually disrupting the pharmaceutical business that is a $4 billion a year business in America that's trying to solve ADD. This game, basically, you play it and it helps fix ADD, so you don't need those drugs anymore. So that's an awesome idea coming out of Hong Kong. So I think it might not necessarily be a drug itself that's being pioneered here, but there are a lot of businesses here that are disrupting it. Your point about the scene, the financial scene here, I think dig a little deeper, you'll find this is quite a big gambit. I mean, there's this kind of Andreessen Horowitz model here that's, you know, for example, Horizon Ventures that would do the whole thing from seed to, you know, pre-IPO as they did with Facebook. So you know, there is that. from my perspective, I mean, what's starting to emerge, and I like to claim that I'm one of these people, is that it's kind of like people that have made money in business are now putting money back into the next generation of entrepreneurs. So, we certainly don't have a PayPal example, but if you look in Silicon Valley, what often, really has taken it to the next level in recent times is like PayPal mafia. All these guys like Reid Hoffman, who clearly I love because I've mentioned him loads of times, and he never replies to my emails for some reason, but anyway. He's a good example. These guys have made money doing something. Elon Musk made money in PayPal, and then they've gone and reinvested it back into doing the next crazy thing. So that's starting to happen in Hong Kong. I am one of those people. I'm lucky Hong Kong has allowed me to make money, and I'm now putting it back into the ecosystem. So that's one part of the equation. Maybe you could talk to the Series A, Series B, but that's happening here too. But frankly, I mean, the one thing about that is a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I can't raise any money in Hong Kong. It's so tough here." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me your ideas." You know what? Your idea's crap. Because honestly, I can tell you, this city has a serious amount of money. You have to walk, in Central to see it. It's got the money. The ideas have to be good enough. The capital is chasing ideas. Like my firm, we have money sitting in the bank. If we don't deploy it, we don't make a living. And then my wife's going to tell me to get a real job. So we have to deploy that capital, and it's no different the Series A, Series B level. But the problem with the Series A, Series B level, which you can talk to, is hard for them to find good deals. That's all that fit their criteria of scalable, global.
Yeah. So if you take a model, if you model a Series A, Series B portfolio, right, you raise 100, 200 million, and you basically have to deploy it in 10, 15 deals. And if, let's say 5 of them do okay, few $100 million exits, you're doing fine. But that's a 10, 20, 30x kind of multiple per deal, right? So it's a very high bar that we are looking for. We're looking for companies that will basically do a 50x in the next 5 years, right? Most companies on the planet have no chance of doing that. And that's not to say they're lousy companies, that's not to say they're not worth building. It's just not the profile for a VC investment, right? So before you go talk to a VC to raise money, make sure you understand what the VC is looking for, right? And if your business does not fit that profile, it doesn't mean that it can't even get funded. There are seed investors that are okay with a smaller return, with lower risk, right? And I really think that the challenge out here is just having enough experienced people coaching the next generation of entrepreneurs so that deals actually make sense. There is, I think, in the whole South of China situation, also a shortage of people who can actually do Series A and B deals, which is why I'm doing this now. That stage of a company is very, very tricky, especially if you have first-time entrepreneurs, and there are lots of first-time entrepreneurs here, right? So having people to be able to help guide them through the Series A, Series B, and fundraise and so on, that's tough. It gets a lot easier when it comes to raising money for the C rounds, the D rounds, because you have a business that's an ongoing concern, there's a sales learning curve that's passed, so you know actually what to do to make money. So all you have to do is show this to financial folks, and they exist all around the world, from Asia to the US, and they can invest from a pure sort of financial perspective, right? So I actually worry a lot less about the later rounds after the early stage rounds, because money is smart around the world and it'll find the right deals. The problem with the early stage stuff is it's a local business, right? If you go to the Valley to try and raise money today and you say, I'm a Hong Kong company, they'll tell you, sorry, we can't invest in Hong Kong. Most of them will do that, right? Why? Because they are in the Valley. It's very simple. They want to be able to drive to see you and say hi, drink coffee, talk about the problems you're having, and coach you through the first few years of your life as a company, right? And that's very hard if you're out here. And so I think that will actually result in some number of Series A, Series B companies, funds being formed out Asia. In fact, I know there's at least half a dozen guys that are, half a dozen firms that are in the process of raising money for Series A and B right now. So I think the problem is getting solved, and it will be much easier over the next few years for entrepreneurs.
And to add to that, first of all, definitely if you're a startup and you think raising money in Silicon Valley is easy, you're wrong. It's also very, very tough, even though it's a mature ecosystem. In addition, I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing as a trend in this market, I just invested in, a few years ago we just sold a company to a company called Alive.cn to MiG-33 in China. So basically we're jumping Series A and Series B and we're just going straight to exit, which is an interesting potential phenomenon. If you look at Oculus, you guys may have all heard about this, does a campaign on Kickstarter and then sells to Facebook for 2.2 billion. Instagram, these stories are more and more common now, where these big corporations frankly have cash piles, like Google have their own venture firm, Google Ventures. Microsoft even have one now, Microsoft Ventures, right? So they're actually stepping in a way to the Series A, Series B gap and buying up these firms much earlier. I mean, the number one buyer of companies globally is Google, which is interesting. It's the market leader in every respect really right now, but it's still the one buying the most amount of companies and importing that talent. So that's a trend. But I also agree that there is a huge push in Asia for Series A, Series B, which is going to be very important for the ecosystem here to thrive. Very important.
So may I jump in?
Yep, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to address the questions to this gentleman because it seems like that we are in opposing camps of thoughts. Right now, some people have been talking about maybe passions, the subjective attribute would be okay. Certainly you have been talking about we have to have a kind of benchmark. That kind of benchmarks may be, it cannot be applied here because it's here in Hong Kong. It's not like what we do in the West. So it seems like that we have been talking about what Facebook will be quite willing to offer 2.2 billion for the kind of virtual realities, that kind of goggles. But have the kinds of second thought about what we are talking about. So we are talking about something like the YGL magazine. The YGL magazine? Is YGL magazine adaptable here in Hong Kong? I think this is something that we have to debate. Because we just happen to be people in investment size. We identify people with potential projects, entrepreneurs is sometimes just an excuse. We call it a scapegoat. We find that we made a cut of the entrepreneurs, we got it resell or resold to somebody and make a huge cut out of that. So the exit strategies, we have to quantify your exit strategies. So how much cut? So what is your IRR? Typically, the IRR is over 23.5. So what is the IRR for the second round or the third round? To be fair to the entrepreneur here in this part of the world. Let's say there's everybody's know about that. Say Alibaba's, Tencent's, they got its debuts, somewhere in Shenzhen University. It's not from MIT. So people here in Hong Kong now they want to get themselves enrolled in Shenzhen University instead of MIT. So we have to think about it seriously. About should we have that models from the overseas to be well migrated into this part of the world? I think so. This is a responsible way to respond to the questions. Well, otherwise, all our entrepreneurs are so vulnerable. And that's why there are many publications in China now. So we go to China, southern part of China. They're so scared of Goldman Sachs because they're thinking that Goldman Sachs they are really terrible people. They're taking, they're scheming out profits, out of, whatever. They're so scared of that. So just, this is another good example. There's one group, I think, second tier investment banks here. A couple of years ago, I think everybody's know about that. It's a Papa Jeffy. It's the Papa Jeffy's, the PJ one. So they have been here trying to get the portfolios pretty well done here. They have been in, the sea trip, some numbers of that kinds of hotels in China. But it's a terrible disaster, and they left Hong Kong and they have to go back. They have to go back. So what's the rationale behind that? So we have to find it out. We are not talking about, we are not trying here to excite the local entrepreneur that this is somewhat like what is happening in the valley. What is happening in the valley, I should say that it's not applicable here. So should we read YGL magazine? So it's, well, just so I don't want to monopolize the airtime, so 2 questions. What kind of magazine that you read?
Long way to get to the question, okay. We had an editorial and now we got the advertising.
Second is this. What is your exit strategy? For your group or whatever, there should be one exit strategy. So, well, well, I would like to learn something from you guys. That's how to quantify your exit strategies. You know, this is so crucial. Well, we can, talk to Shanghai Peng, and then there will be some things, and talk to those PE guys in China. That is another something. Well, may I share one more thought about this? What's happening is terrible to the entrepreneur here right now in a sense. One very, very famous book in China around, talking about entrepreneurs. So one basic recipe for them is that if I'm able to be a very, very corrupted officials in China, this is a benchmark, I will be okay. I can get my IPO, I can get my PIPO. So how to reconcile these kind of opposing forces? The last remark is talking about the disruptive technologies.
All right, that was your last remark, actually. All right, 2 quick questions. What do you read? And I don't know why we always ask this. I asked this a lot of times, and someone told me, oh, I'm building this company for my 2nd, my 3rd, my 4th generation, and I hadn't heard that in so long. It was refreshing. But what's your exit strategy? 2nd question. No more, okay? We've got other questions. But very good, thanks. Who wants to start? Okay?
I read things online now. I don't even buy magazines.
Right, yeah.
A lot of stuff. I have a news reader and a configurator to tell me what to read. What's my exit strategy? Actually, again, if you go back to the right entrepreneur, if you have the right entrepreneur, you actually don't worry much about what the exit strategy is. If you build a company that's making sense, making a difference, making profits, at some point, you'll come. And as a long-term investor, when I go into the company, I'm sitting there 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Right? I have no clue what the market is going to be like 5 years from now. I don't think anyone sitting in this room does, or anyone in Hong Kong does. So trying to prepare yourself for an exit in a climate that you have no idea what's going to be there is kind of silly. So you just look for people that build real value, and over time the exits take care of themselves.
Okay. Any questions on what you read?
Guys ever watch Saturday Night Live? One of the best things was a skit where they asked Sarah Palin, what she read. She said everything. And so no, what in particular? No, everything. I read everything, all of it. So it's like I read everything, all of it, all the time. But no, I mean, one of the things I have by my bedside table is the Lean Startup. As a book, I think this is a really good. I mean, actually, out of interest, who knows the Lean Startup movement? Who knows all about this? Who in this room is an entrepreneur? Who in this room is thinking of starting a company? No. Read the Lean Startup. Honestly, I mean, to me, it changes the way you think about how you build product. I think, we look back to the 1900 with Ford when he started. He believes the car is going to be required and builds all the infrastructure out and then pushes it out and luckily people buy it. You don't need to do it that way anymore with social media and all these other things. And Oculus is a good example of that. You can put it up on Kickstarter and find out there's a market for it. So the Lean Startup is what I suggest people read as opposed to what I actually read because I read a lot of crap. And then the exit strategy, this again, you've got to be very careful with this, like what's your exit strategy? I mean, as an investor, I like to have an exit strategy of some description. And because Hong Kong or Asia in general is maturing, I quite like trade exits as an option. But actually, culturally, for that founder, having no exit at all is a good idea. That's why I hate models like Rocket Internet, because they're basically copying other people's ideas, going as fast as they can, hoping that someone else is going to buy it. And what you find is the people that come out of McKinsey and Boston Consulting to go and do those ideas, 2 years later, when OpenTable doesn't buy their idea, they're stuck running it in Russia. It's freaking cold there, right? So basically, it's got to be careful. The exit strategy, you've got to be very careful. Personally, I always look at it like, I mean, even from my own firm, Nest, I never think about exit. Ironically, I've had 2 firms off to buy it as a deal flow platform for for themselves, right? So actually, if you don't seek it, it comes to you. That's the interesting thing about it. You just get your head down and build a business. And the companies I invest in, of course, as an investor, I need to exit to get my money back, to put it back into more companies, right? So, and to prove to my wife I'm really doing a real job. So I need, I need that money back. But often, surprisingly, the exits come out of the blue. So, say the company we sold to Mid-33, that offer came out of the blue. So, and then the founder wanted to do it because he could then, like Oculus guys, they can sell it to Facebook, and then they can scale it much quicker than if they do it by raising Series A, Series B. So in the end, for me, the exit strategy is all about really what the founder wants to do. But if you look at it, like Facebook, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, when Yahoo coming off for $1 billion, he says no, and that's why now it's worth 170 billion. Ironically, because he said no.
Chuck, I think you had a different view on this.
Okay, yeah, I think it's case by case. Some companies it get a very unique technology, is very advanced in the area. Like one company I involved in co-founding. At that time it's internet bombing, and then we developed the optical fiber technology. Then we just got the prototype working. We just sold it to Cisco for tons of money. I think that's one way to exit. It's very, because if you take a long time to actually to ramp it up, to go to mass production, and then to compete with Cisco, so it's much easier to just sell it to Cisco. But for some other technology, like another company I invested, Yan Internet, that one, then we go for the IPO in NASDAQ. That kind of social network website is more suitable to be go IPO. So I think it's really a case by case.
Okay. In your current business, no plan.
The current business, I need to keep myself busy, so no.
Okay. Last question.
Yes. Thanks. Hi. My question is actually back to the question about the ecosystem for investment and how you get sort of raw talents through the incubator like yours, Simon's Next and Y Combinator model through the Series A and Series B sort of investment that Peng does. And I'm actually looking at the Singapore model, right? Because in Singapore, the Singapore government actually plays a role in putting out sort of almost unlimited $50,000 Sing startups with no questions asked, just to create the deal flow, assuming there's enough talent and entrepreneurs there who want to take a $50,000 Sing. So they create all these startups. And then there's the next layer of incubators or Y Combinators, and next that then comes in and sort of grooms them for the next 6 months to a year until at such time either they die or they get invested by Series A. So there's a whole stage there. Now in this ecosystem, in particular in Singapore, and Indian Sydney is actually also involved in that, is that actually the Singapore government actually co-invests in the layer here, both in the incubator, in the Series A and Series B. So my question to Peng and actually the whole panel too would be, how applicable is this model to Hong Kong? Does it help or does it not help? And if it does, where and how?
From Singapore. Where are you from?
Actually, Peng was in Hong Kong for the last 24 years. So I'm Malaysian.
I'm Malaysian.
Yeah, I sound Singaporean, but I'm Malaysian.
Oh,
okay. There's a big difference between the two. Let's not get anywhere near that, Simon. Get killed for that in Malaysia.
Wow, killed. That's a registered threat. People will know if you do that, But no, so well, look, I mean, first of all, this is always this thing about Singapore and Hong Kong. And so, well, I'm from England, so I'm not going to necessarily pick a side, but I actually think it should be Singapore plus Hong Kong versus Silicon Valley, if you ask me, as I said earlier. But I do think it's quite dangerous the track that Singapore's on, just to mention this interference in creating a fake economy. If you look at Silicon Valley, you see no government intervention. I mean, right now the Hong Kong government is talking about putting money into startups. I say do not do it. First of all, they're not elected to spend taxpayers' money. So some guy can't afford his taxes as it is. We're taking his taxes and giving it to a startup. This would actually benefit me if they did it. You know, this matching scheme that Singapore's doing and all that. Personally, I would personally benefit from it because I'm investing in startups and they would match it. All sounds good, right? But if you look at the detail of it, the truth is, first of all, it creates fake valuations. Second, since when is government ownership in any company been a good idea? I mean, you think about it from a perspective of a taxpayer, seeing some guy playing basketball or ping pong all day, and I invested in that company but I didn't ask to, and then it failed, and they lose all their money. I mean, Hong Kong's kind of already tried this in the past, shall I say, with Cyberport, right? So it's dangerous. Cyberport's now making a huge comeback with Peng Lam. Shout out to him that's running Cyberport. They're doing a great job, but it's an uphill struggle because they're not, frankly, they're not entrepreneurs. They're investing in companies. They're using taxpayers' money to do it. It creates a false economy and it creates a fake valuation in those businesses. As an investor, it scares the crap out of me because you talk to these guys and they've spent 7 months filling out the forms to get the money to survive. So actually, when you go to invest, like, we've got enough money to survive 2 years. I was in Singapore 2 weeks ago. This is exactly the conversation. We've got enough money to survive 2 years. I'm like, can you do it in 3 months and find out whether you've got a business that's worth your time? And fail fast, fail quick. Don't survive for 2 years. That's 2 years of your life. Don't you value your own time? It's like, oh no, but the government scheme, this is how it's structured. It's like, crap, you know, it doesn't make sense.
If I understand, I think it's an answer that
Of course, Peng has to say something.
Yes. I actually agree. A lot of the programs there are not making sense. For example, the $50,000 POP program called iGEM or something, right? They give you 50,000. How long does 50,000 bucks last? So what happened there is it took a lot of people who would otherwise join startups and got them to start companies, and then within a year they shut down and they go get a job at a big company. So it took a whole bunch of people off the market, which is kind of silly. And it made the CEOs of proper startups, I mean startups that have got traction, gave them a tough time trying to find employees. There was, in the 90s, there was this program that got, I think it was $1.5 billion into a bunch of mainly Silicon Valley VCs, and was hoping that what the requirement is that you have to open up shop in Singapore, and pretty soon they realized there's no deals to invest in Singapore. They all went to China, which is why there's so many Singaporean VCs in China. But it didn't develop because there's lots of failed attempts. The one attempt that was, I think, sort of reasonable was actually the TIS program that they actually ripped off Israel, basically. It was an 85-15. This is the matching money you're talking about. And right now it's a mess too. There's too much paperwork, etc. But basically, for every dollar you invest in, the government will match $6, which means you basically do a lot of investments, right? And basically what happened is it brought a lot of pretty smart people into Singapore to start investing. A lot of these guys are now investing without that because there's too much trouble, too much paperwork, etc. But they're in Singapore and they're investing. So I think Israel saw that work at some point and they started doing that. So I think that sort of kicked off the spark in Singapore probably about 5-6 years ago. Right now, I think the government can pull out of all these programs and it'll be fine. And I think it should actually. I think it is interfered enough. I think, you know, I'm a libertarian economist, I guess, so I don't believe in the interference of the market by the government, except there's one case when the market is nascent and it doesn't exist. How do you jumpstart it, right? Big countries like the US can have it evolve almost, you know, organically. I think small places like Israel, Singapore, Hong Kong, I think you might need some socialist intervention to cause the market to start. Yeah, that's I don't know if that answers it.
If I understand it, they just launched the next stage for the VCs, right?
Yeah. And I'm a
of
beneficiary
that.
Right? But that one barely moves the needle. I mean, honestly speaking, they took I think $8 million a piece, times six pieces, and each Series A, Series B fund gets a piece of that. And what happens is that you got to match it, and then when you do an investment and it gives a return, they'll take 5% per annum, and then the rest is yours to share with your LP. So it's a one-to-one matching. But most AB funds are $50, $100 million. So it's $8 million is one-to-one. So it really doesn't affect you all much.
But I guess you're doing it because it gets you a bit of publicity.
Yeah, there's some PR.
About the money.
If parents will give you money, you take it. At the end of the day, I think it's completely the wrong strategy, though. I mean, I'm actually at the moment pushing quite hard with the Hong Kong government to watch out on this one, because they're looking at Singapore. Let's put money in. I think it's like it's the easiest route to solve the problem they think they're solving, which is kickstart this ecosystem. And the truth is, actually, it's completely the wrong strategy, because let's face it, Hong Kong and Singapore, money is not the problem, right? There's so much money sitting here.
No, but talent is a problem.
It's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly the point I'm going to make. But what I'm saying at the moment to the Hong Kong government is, look, don't follow the Singapore route. Instead, they've got 26 offices around the world, right? Power those offices up to promote, come to Hong Kong to start your startup. Give those people a visa. I mean, I just got a visa for one of our startup CTOs, and they don't understand the difference between a startup and an SME. You try to describe a startup, startup, definition of a startup, there's lots of different versions of this, but my definition, and many people agree, is it's a company in search of revenue that can reoccur, right? So Instagram, for example, is still a startup, because it's still searching for a revenue stream, although it was $1.2 billion valuation bought, purchased the company. So, but still, you go to the Hong Kong government and you try to get a visa for our CTO, and they will say to you, well, what's the revenue model? What's the business plan? All these things that we don't care about, they want before they'll give a visa. So that's the thing that they need to fix. They need to spend time reaching out, tell people about the opportunity in this market, and it's low tax, good rule of law, but focus on bringing those young entrepreneurs here. Allow talent, so the talented entrepreneurs that start businesses, allow them to bring more talent here. These are the things we need to focus on, because that's what's going to create great companies, and ultimately then people like myself and the rest of this panel here, we're looking for investment. So that's it, done. Problem solved. Throwing government money at this is just a joke.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I was not and we co-invested in a company where the founder was an MIT PhD, and I had lunch with him because they had problems with his visa. So they're right.
The problem with money is the problem with
there's a science part and
I mean, dare I say, because I'm at the science park, I probably have to say this while I'm at the science park, and they never invite me back, so I'm going to say it. I also think there needs to be a bit of a call to arms. All of us in Hong Kong need to kind of say this with the same voice, that we have to also be very careful with this kind of model that Hong Kong presently runs. Presently, Hong Kong is a service-based economy. We get nearly all of our revenue from servicing 50 million visitors in the last 12 months. Right? We all know this is not sustainable. So my pitch is we should move from a service-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. An example of what I mean is, it's great that we bring organisations like Microsoft here, but the problem is that then it sucks up all the talent that could have gone and started something for themselves, that we can start here, back that talent here, and then they export it around the world. It all gets sucked up. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully one day the whole room will applaud. And believe me, that we need to change. Hong Kong cannot continue under a service-based economy. We've got to move to a knowledge-based economy, and that means turning away, frankly, maybe Microsoft for a little while, and allowing us to build, instead of brand America, brand Hong Kong, brand entrepreneur Hong Kong, and allow them to create apps that go global, create businesses that can go global and become a knowledge-based economy.
Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. We went over time, but it was flowing, so I let it go over time. But it's time to end. We're going to take a summer break, July and August. September 15th, we have Victor Feng, who'll be talking on e-commerce and the future he sees for that, for his company and the world. Mid-October, we have John Cheng, born in Hong Kong, but he's the global CEO of BlackBerry. It's all about how he's turning it around. And then in November, we have Mary Grove, who heads up global entrepreneurial initiatives at Google, and she'll be our guest. So hopefully you'll come back to other sessions and briefings. But for now, if we could turn to our thought leaders, 4 great people, and give them a round of applause. We'll see you in September, and if you could take just a second to fill in the event survey, that would be great. Thanks, guys.